Rufina sobbed uncontrollably in Dr. Amos's office, her body trembling with fear and guilt. Derek, her husband, lay in a critical state at the hospital, and she felt the weight of his impending death on her chest.
Madam, I need you to calm down.
Dr. Amos said firmly, but kindly.
I can't help your husband unless you tell me everything. Did he eat anything unusual? Was anything added to his meals recently? Please, Rufina, this could save him.
Rufina hesitated, her mind racing. She wanted to believe the doctor could help, but admitting the truth would mean exposing her shame and guilt. Still, the thought of Derek gasping for life haunted her, and she couldn't hold back anymore.
I gave him something,
she whispered, her voice barely audible. Dr. Amos leaned in, his tone urgent but composed.
What was it? This is important, Rufina. If I know what it is, I can try to treat him properly.
It was jam.
Rufina confessed, tears streaming down her face.
The Juju man gave me a powder to put in his food. I thought it would make him love me more. Stop him from ever looking at another woman. He never cheated, but I just wanted to be sure.
Dr. Amos sighed deeply. This wasn't the first time he had encountered a case like this. Over the years, he had seen many men brought in by desperate wives who had used charms. In almost every case, the substances turned out to be toxic, causing irreparable harm. Despite Rufina's confession, it was too late. Hours later, Derek succumbed to the damage caused by the charm. Rufina collapsed in despair when Dr. Amos delivered the news.
I'm sorry,
the doctor said gently.
But Rufina, you need to understand, this isn't magic. These charms are dangerous poisons, and they destroy more than just the body. They destroy trust, love, and lives.
Overwhelmed by guilt, Rufina began piecing together the events leading to her husband's death. She confirmed through a private laboratory in another town that the powder she had used contained harmful chemicals that matched the hospital's findings. Her lovely husband, who had never cheated, was gone because of her insecurities and naivety. Determined to prevent other women from making the same mistake, Rufina started speaking to women in the community about the dangers of charms. However, her warnings were met with skepticism. Many women, like her former neighbor Bertha, clung to the belief that charms were the only way to secure their husband's loyalty. Frustrated but undeterred, Rufina decided to take a different approach. She disguised herself as a juju woman, offering charms to women in the town. What they didn't know was that the powders she sold were harmless mixtures of flour and food coloring. Along with the fake charms, Rufina gave the women practical advice on how to strengthen their relationships, listening, communicating, and showing genuine care. Over time, the women reported that their husbands were more attentive and loving. They believed the charms were working, but in reality, it was the positive changes in their own behavior that made the difference. Months later, a young doctor named Charles was transferred to the town. He rented an apartment near Rufina's home and quickly became intrigued by her mysterious activities. He observed her interactions with the women and eventually confronted her. Charles said one evening,
"Rufina, I know what you're doing."
Rufina froze, her heart racing.
I can't explain.
Charles interrupted.
You don't need to. I understand your intentions, and I admire your courage. But you can't keep this up. These women need to understand the truth that love and trust can't come from powders or charms. They have to build it themselves.
Rufina sighed.
If I tell them, they'll just go back to their real Juju men. At least this way, nobody else dies.
Charles saw her point, but urged her to consider another approach.
People need to learn from their mistakes, Rufina. Shielding them only delays the inevitable. Let them see the consequences of their actions, and maybe they'll start to change.
As Rufina and Charles spent more time together, they developed a deep bond. Charles admired Rufina's passion for helping others, and she found solace in his wisdom and support. Eventually, Charles proposed to Rufina, and they decided to start a new life together in another town. Before leaving, Rufina wrote an anonymous letter to the women in the community, revealing the truth about her fake charms and urging them to abandon harmful practices. The letter sparked outrage and reflection. Some women were angry, but others began to question their beliefs. Slowly, the culture of charm began to fade, replaced by a growing understanding of love, trust, and mutual respect. Rufina and Charles' story became a powerful example of how compassion, education, and honesty could transform even the most deeply rooted traditions.